Hey there. Good afternoon, YouTube. How are you guys doing? So I made a little video because I'm about to take my Security Plus exam, and I would like to share with you my three pitfalls of the Security Plus 701 exam. So my three pitfalls that I'm going to go over are vocabulary, certificates, and data governance. This is where I struggled the most on my practice exams, and I found that these are my weaknesses. So if you follow this method and you find what your weaknesses are, you can use different strategies to try to improve and get a better score. Okay, so number one, vocabulary. So let's take a look here. I have a vocabulary weakness. Learn to scan for synonyms. So what is a synonym? A synonym is when a word is the same. So there is a synonym in this question that's similar to the answer. So obviously we need to know what these acronyms stand for. It's part of the learning process. And what's the best way to do this? Let's put this into Paint. Probably just gonna type it. Okay. So before I even look at the question, I'm just gonna answer what these acronyms mean. Mean time between failure. Okay. So that's the first one. MTBF, mean time to repair. Recovery point, objective, and recovery. So a lot of these words are pretty similar, but they are not the same. So you have to be really, really careful. It's a wordy test. So one's talking about between failure, the time to repair, the recovery point and the recovery time. So these are all different. Although they may look the same, they're totally different meanings. Okay, so now let's highlight a word here. Okay, so we really need to scan and skim for words. I felt like I had an advantage because I used to teach reading and language a lot. If I had to do this with my students, we'd have to scan and skim for certain words to understand better. You don't have to read every single word. In fact, it's better if you don't. Just focus on the words that are important. Okay, Department of Transportation Company maintains an on-site inventory switch if a failure occurs, the on-site technician can replace the interface card and you have the system running again in 60 minutes. Which of the following best describes this recovery metric? So there's a lot of different directions you can go here, right? Which one would be the best? So you have to really use your judgment. So it's really wanting to know about a time, 60 minutes. I think that's the most important thing we need to observe here. So I know that we need to focus on time between failure or time to repair. I'm gonna lean towards A or B, right? Which one's better though? Well, it really wants to know about time to repair. Have the system running in 60 minutes. It needs to be running, not between failures, but like an annual thing. But when will it be back online? How much time does it take to repair? Because I saw 60 minutes. B is going to be the better answer. Okay, so a lot of patience, a lot of scanning, a lot of skimming, really knowing your stuff. Very tricky, right? Okay, let's look at another example. Acronyms. Well, like we saw up here, we just need to know what these certain acronyms mean. Okay, so implementing fingerprint scanner, access to data center, which of these metrics should be kept at a minimum in order to prevent honors from accessing things? Okay. Uh, so these are like one-time passcodes, one-time passwords. Nays are rates, failure, rejection rate, failure acceptance rate. When we need to keep things secure and prevent unauthorized people from accessing something, which is the most important. Well, if it doesn't work correctly or it lets someone in that they're not supposed to, then that would be what? A failure acceptance rate. It shouldn't accept that person, but it did. So that's very dangerous. Okay. So yeah, a lot of acronyms to memorize, just so many. You're gonna find words that correlate to each other, but they're just a little bit different. For example, data mask is when you want to actually change what it looks like, and it's gonna like censor or blur out part of the data, maybe as it's leaving the network or coming into the network. You'll need to know that. Okay, data tokenization, when you're replacing an ID or a number with a session ID or a token or something like that. It represents something else and it can be referenced somewhere else, but you're not actually giving them the original value or the original data. So that's more secure. And then you'll have to know the idea of encryption, or basically scrambling that data to where it's not able to be read unless you have that key to unscramble it. Okay, so that seemed to really help me and give me some guidance on the vocabulary, which is pretty tricky. It just takes a lot of time and effort, and you just got to practice, make mistakes, and learn. Okay, certificates. I thought this was difficult for me. I understand the general ideas of certificates, like a private key, a public key, signing, proving who you are, validating those things. But my knowledge is not in depth enough for this exam. There's a lot of new things that I need to learn. I felt when I visualized these things, I understood it better. If I just write a bunch of words in a paragraph on a piece of paper, I don't really get it. Okay, so let's start with the simplest idea and expand. So what is signing, or you sign with a certificate? It's just to prove who you are. We use certificates when we use the internet, right? Does Google have one? Yeah, cool. I'm secure, right? What's my certificate? We can see here. Oh, you're google.com. That's your common name. It can tell you other things. You're valid, your public key, and your cert here. 256 feet. That's called a fingerprint. Okay, so that's an example in the real world. So that comes from a root certificate. That's a highly protected area, not available to someone like me, a client on the internet, but I would probably talk to a root certificate authority or an RA, but not the root certificate. Um, I would get my cert there and then it would prove, hey, we're google.com. That is really who we are, and you can see it there. So that's the idea of a certificate and proving who you are. Okay. For the exam, you really need to know what a hash is. It's a one-way function. It says, hey, this file is this value. And if it matches, it means it's been unchanged. Very important for integrity. We'll need to know the ideas of digital signatures. We'll need to know what a private key is, or one that's only available to you, and then a public key, or one that's available to other people out on the internet. Let's take this example. So Alice creates a SHA-256 hash of her message. Okay, so when she made the message, she hashed it. She did a one-way function saying, hey, my message is 6071B45FC3. So that way, before she sends it to someone, they can see what the real hash is. So if they receive that message and it's different, then they know, hey, something changed, something's compromised. So after we put the hash in a message, I think when we saw the key here, we see the hash. Yeah, you get the public key, right? Uh, you can use your private key to sign it. Anyway, okay, so we're signing it with our private key. We add a digital signature. Sorry, that's what I wanted to look at, a digital signature and the public key. Okay, So Alice puts her signature in the message, puts the hash in the message, delivers it to Bob. Bob opens the message. He can see the digital signature. He can use Alice's public key available to him that's already been shared. And if he puts those two together, it will match the hash function that's already sent to him. Now he can verify. This is for sure, 100%, the message that Alice sent earlier. And then when he uses his computed hash and the public key, or sorry, when he uses the digital signature and the public key, he gets the hash value. Bob then performs a comparison of his received hash with this new computed hash of the file, and he sees that these numbers are not the same, so the integrity is not valid. So good to know. Hashing, digital signature, private key, public key, how do they work? Okay, moving on. Things like perfect forward secrecy, I would read about it, but not quite get it. How do two people out on the internet exchange encrypted messages and they know that it's going to get the same value? Well, when we put two values together, let's see, we have P, we have G, we have A, and we have B. We're going to use these two shared keys, these two private keys, and when we put the mathematical functions together, you're always going to end up with the same value. So perfect forward secrecy took me a little bit to get, but then I essentially learned that you're always going to get the same values when you have your shared secret and then your private secret. You put those together and you always get the same numbers. It's a very secure way to share information and files together. Okay. One that I had a tough time with on my multiple choice on my practice exams were the online certificate status protocol, or it's called stapling. And what is it really? It just makes things faster. It adds your certificate status instead of having to contact the certificate authority or the root or whatever to get what the status is. When you send that initial request to the web server, then you will get the status on the three-way handshake initially. So it's just a faster way to get the status of the cert and go back and forth, communicate. Otherwise, you'd have to use like a certification revocation list. Okay. Data governance and roles. I found this to be hard because I don't have experience with this particular concept or framework. And I don't know, it's just pretty wordy, pretty boring. So I struggled with it. So let's summarize. What is a data owner? A high-ranking employee, a vice president holds the owner role, ensuring the data is properly protected. So let's say this is like a CEO or a vice, someone who really knows a lot about the company and probably how that data should be owned. They're the owner. Ah, CEO, owner, CEO, Chief Executive Officer, owner, officer. I know they're not the same word, but when I think CEO, I'm going to think owner. That helped me. I hope it helps you. Okay, controller. Um, yep. GDPR, General Data Privacy Regulation. Okay, so they know how to identify data. Identifies the purpose condition. They ID it. They control it. They know what it is, what it's used for. Maybe the owner doesn't classify things so much or group it or organize it, but the controller would. They're a very detailed person and they know what data goes where and why and how and when and all those technical questions. Okay, a processor, I want you to think of a cloud. In the 701 exam, this is a new word, I believe. I don't think it was in 601, but don't quote me on that. Okay, so if you're using a cloud provider, cloud storage, a processor would be a third party or a vendor that would help you process that information on a separate network or in the cloud. Okay, custodian. The custodian is the data steward. Well, you might see steward in some examples. You might see custodian. This is the person who can transport, to store it, to back it up. Typically, it's going to be IT, and they handle the data, maybe the ACL rules, all of the things related to controlling that data, giving access to it, helping people, backing it up, whatever the responsibilities are that the company needs. And hard to get some of these visuals, but I found that pyramid was pretty good. So think of it like on the top, the owner. Okay, they're the ones who control the board. The steward is involved in the data process. Keep in mind, steward and custodian, similar word, right? And yeah, that makes it a little bit confusing because the exam says steward and custodian are the same thing. Where is controller? Controller's not in here, but probably in the middle, right? Okay. And then just to see responsibilities like that, that kind of helps me too. Okay, owners are on the top, they're the senior. The steward might have the rules, or quality custodian would be more of the IT, security, ACL, backup. Okay. Well, these are the things that help me as I'm preparing for the exam, kind of my weak points. Good to go over it. And yeah, I just have to do a lot of practice exams, find my weaknesses, address them, and just keep going. So hopefully I pass tomorrow. Let's see. Thanks for watching, and good luck on your exams, everybody. If you like my video, please click like and subscribe. Check out my videos for other content. Good luck.